What's up, fantasy managers? I want to talk about the big guys up front because they should be able to eat their cake too. The offensive line is important for your fantasy players to score points. I have the offensive line report for week 13. I know you're interested, so stick around for 7 seconds. This information can help you decide your own fantasy tiebreakers, who to start, who to sit. By understanding the advantage in the trenches will give you the advantage over your league mates. I have 3 players that you want to target. I have 3 players that you want to avoid. All this information is on PFF. I subscribe to it, so you don't have to, but I will relay the information to you, starting with my notes right now. And the first game that we're going to target is the Chargers versus the Falcons. The Chargers offensive line has allowed just a 24.5% pressure rate. That's 11th best mark this season. Atlanta's defensive line ranks 32nd in pass rush grade at 53.8 and 31st in pressure rate at 26.2. So this is something we have seen in previous weeks. We have tried to target that defensive line for the Atlanta Falcons. A couple of weeks ago, we were saying start Bo Nix because of the pressure rate for Atlanta's defensive line. They suck. And what did Bo Nix do? Oh, he just went up and put up 30 points. No big deal. Quarterback 3 of the week. This time, they're saying the Chargers, even though they don't have a top 10 offensive line when it comes to preventing pressure rate, they're still good enough where it's going to make a difference in this game in Atlanta. One person that does benefit is Quentin Johnson. He's the deep threat for the Chargers, but you know what? He forgot how to catch the ball. He's eating popcorn before the game. He's not wiping off his hands. He's got butterfingers. He's dropping the ball. He went 0 for 5 last week. The one person that PFF is saying that you need to target and put in your lineup to line up your fantasy roster is Justin Herbert, and I'm totally on board with this. Justin Herbert is actually my play of the week for this reason right here, because Atlanta defensive line cannot pressure the quarterback, so you're giving an elite quarterback time to throw in the pocket without J.K. Dobbins possibly. This could be a good matchup for Justin Herbert. Herbert disappointed in fantasy last week relative to expectations, finishing as the overall quarterback 13 on a week where 6 teams were on bye. That's not good. Herbert leads the NFL from a clean pocket with a 92.3 passing grade and 15 big-time throws. Herbert also has just 3 turnover-worthy plays on 244 dropbacks when kept clean, and has thrown 0 interceptions in those situations. Herbert is in a great spot to bounce back this week thanks to not just a favorable matchup in the trenches, but the Falcons are also allowing the 7th most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. So when you keep Justin Herbert clean so he doesn't have to do laundry the next day, he can sit back there and he can take his time and throw deep ball attempts, and that's what he does. He's top 8 in deep ball attempts, and when I look here, his 3rd in deep ball catchable pass rate. So when this guy is kept in your pocket, he's kept clean, he likes to throw the ball deep, he actually has somebody, Quentin Johnson, who has benefited from this in the past, but hopefully he's not eating popcorn before pregame, and instead he's eating carrots because they don't leave a buttery residue. He's actually going to make those catches. Justin Herbert, he's going to scorch that team. They don't have J.K. Dobbins this week. They have Gus Edwards, who isn't great running the ball, so he'll likely have to throw it. A lot of Falcons are coming from a bye. They're going to be prepared for this team. There's a possibility that this could be a shootout. The over and under is 47.5, so there will be points scored. I would put this guy in your lineup. I would feel comfortable for him to light up the points for your team this week. And the second offensive line that we're going to target this week is the Bills. Yes, we're going to Buffalo because they are playing the San Francisco 49ers. The Bills' offensive line has earned a 73.2 pass blocking grade, which ranks 12th this season after allowing just a 24.8% pressure rate. That's 13th overall. The 49ers could potentially be without former defensive player of the year, Nick Bosa, again this week. Without him last week, the 49ers managed just a 60.9 pass rush grade. That was 17th among 26 teams. I don't know why it says 26, not 32, but 17th among 26 teams. That's not good. Nick Bosa is ranked 8th in pressure rate this season. When he's playing the edge, he gets to the quarterback or he pressures the quarterback 21% of the time. That's a huge player loss for the San Francisco 49ers if he cannot play again. With the Bills' offensive line just being the middle of the pack, ranked 13th and allowing 24.8% pressure rate, without Nick Bosa, that just drops the San Francisco 49ers pressure rate to get to the quarterback. So this could be a good matchup for the Bills. And of course, it's going to be a benefit for the wide receivers, for the quarterback. But the quarterback, he's going to get his because, you know, Josh Allen, he's also a scrambler. That dude scores about like 15, 20 points a game regardless. But some wide receivers is going to benefit is Keenan Coleman. But Keenan Coleman, he's been limited in practice all week. He is questionable for the game. Not even sure if he's going to play, so I'm not even going to talk about that guy. Mari Cooper, yes, he could benefit Mari Cooper, but the guy just not getting involved in the offense right now. Maybe he will coming up after this bye week. He might be more involved, but the one player who's been there all season, who's been the consistent wide receiver for the Buffalo Bills Mafia is wide receiver Khalil Shakir. And the few things I can tell you about Khalil Shakir is that he lives in the slot. He's in the slot 12 most out of any other wide receiver, but the thing is his end zone, his red zone targets. He only has 8, and that's 30th overall. I believe I heard that the game against the Chiefs before the bye week, he got an end zone target, and that was his first of the season. So when he gets into the red zone, he's not really that involved, but he's one of the players that gets you to the red zone. Hopefully this week could be different. Hopefully he can actually get some more targets and get you that touchdown, but in between the 20s, he's great. Yards after catch, he's number 2 overall. Receptions, he is 12th overall. And he gets target a lot. His target rate is 11th overall. His yards per route run, he's in the top 10. He's 8th overall. He is a good wide receiver. Just needs to get more opportunities inside the red zone. Shakir owns a 29.9% target rate on non-pressure dropbacks, which not only leads his team, but also ranks 18th among 165 qualifying wide receivers and tight ends on the year. Shakir has found natural success in those opportunities, averaging 0.60 fantasy points per route run, which ranks 17th among the same qualifying players on non-pressure dropbacks. Shakir should once again be lined up as Josh Allen's primary target this week, making a favorable matchup, especially if Nick Bosa is unable to go again this week. They're saying he did not practice on Wednesday. I'm recording this on Friday, and I checked. He did not record on Friday either. So PFF is saying that you could put this guy into your lineup because he's going to get targets. When he's sit back there, when he's just chilling, he's going to throw it to Khalil Shakir because his separation, he's also 7th best in wide receivers in getting separation. So he knows how to get open. He knows how to get open. He knows how to get targets. The last 2 weeks, he's gotten 12 targets and 9 targets. So Josh Allen loves to throw the ball to this guy. Let's just hope he gets a touchdown this week, and so he could get that wide receiver 1 numbers. If not, I'm going to see him at low end wide receiver 2. Flex, but PFF is saying to put him into your lineup so you can light up your fantasy points this week. And then the third and the final matchup that we're going to try to target is the Colts offensive line versus the Patriots defensive line. It seems like the Patriots is on here every week. We're either trying to avoid them because they're offensive line, or we're trying to target because they're defensive line. The Colts offensive line is creating 1.5 rushing yards before contact per attempt. That's 5th overall. New England's defensive line, D-line, supposed to be D-line up on there. New England's defensive line has allowed 1.4 rushing yards before contact per attempt this season. That's 24th, while they rank 23rd in run defense grade. So, are we going to talk about it? Do we want to talk about it? I think we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it. This could be the game Jonathan Taylor does something with his life. He's been a bust most of the year. He's only had 1 game over 20 points. It's been a down year for the Colts. Anthony Richardson, mainly Joe Flacco. Jonathan Taylor, who most of us got in the first round, he's kind of been a bust. This week against the New England Patriots, they're saying that you can start him and feel comfortable about it. And like I said before, it's just been a down year for Jonathan Taylor. I mean, the opportunities are there. The opportunity share, he's ranked 1st for running backs. Snap share, he's ranked 3rd for running backs. So he's on the field. He's getting the opportunities, but nothing is working out in that Shane Steichen offense that we all hoped was going to happen. When he does get chances with the ball, I mean, at least he's 5th in breakaway runs, and he's 7th in explosive rating. Juke rate 24th, evaded tackles 18. That's all good. You know, a juke rate of evaded tackles, we kind of want that higher for his first round pick. But in the end, it has just not been there for Jonathan Taylor this year. But this is the matchup that you should be able to put him in and feel comfortable about. Taylor is coming off his worst weekly fantasy finish of the season in week 12, finishing with a season low 35 rushing yards on a season low 11 carries. However, Taylor should bounce right back into top 10 consideration again this week in a prime matchup against the Patriots, and the Colts are favored. When given at least 1 rushing yard before contact, Taylor is averaging 6.9 yards per carry. That's 13th among 31 qualifying running backs. As a clear leader out of the backfield, handling 64% of the team's running back touches this season, Taylor should be locked into RB1 performance this week. The Patriots allowed the 11th most fantasy points per game to opposing running backs this season. This should be a great matchup. What this is saying here, when Taylor's able to get past that 1 yard and not getting touched by a defender, which the New England Patriots, they allow that because they allow, what did I say here, 1.4 rushing yards before contact. So when Taylor gets at least 1 yard, he goes and averages an additional 6.9 yards per carry. That's pretty good. So we're saying we're already going to know he's going to get a lot of opportunities. He's leading the league in opportunity share. Now his rushing, his carries, his yards per carry is going to increase. So we're going to see a lot of rushing yards from this guy and hopefully get down to the goal line, and Anthony Richardson does not vulture a touchdown from him this week. Put him in your lineup. to light up your fantasy points. Yo, if you made it this far and if you're enjoying the information I'm giving you about the offensive line report, then please hit the subscribe and press a like. It goes a long way. We actually have a new goal now because we were able to reach 1,500. Our new goal is 2,000. We can't get there without you guys. We appreciate all you zoners out there. Everything and anything goes a long way. Thank you for watching. Now it's time to go on the other side of the spectrum. And now we're going to talk about players that we want to avoid, players that we want to ice out of our lineups. In the first game that we're going to target is the Seattle Seahawks offensive line versus the New York Jets defensive line. The Seahawks offensive line has allowed a 33.8% pressure rate, the third worst mark in the league, while also ranking 24th in pass blocking grade at 62.0. The Jets defensive line has generated the second best pressure rate at 40.3% and second best quick pressure rate at 29.4% this season. So what this is saying, the Seattle Seahawks, they cannot protect their quarterback. They can't keep defenders out of their face. And the Jets, they're the second fastest to get there, and they get there at 40% of the time. So who's this going to impact? It can impact DK Metcalf if he plays. Tyler Lockett is a down the field guy. You need time to give him the ball. JSN can actually have a good impact by this because his catches are more close to the line of scrimmage. He is one of Geno Smith's safety valves, but the person that this will impact the most, the person that we're going to try to ice out of your lineups, is Geno Smith. Now, for the most part, Geno Smith has been a good streaming option this year. I mean, the dude throws the ball. He's second in pass attempts. He loves to throw the ball downfield. He's fifth in deep ball attempts. Red zone attempts, they don't run it. They like to pass it. He's 16th in red zone attempts. This guy just passes and passes and passes. Passing yards, number 2. Air yards, number 6. So, what I'm seeing here, oh, look at this last one, too. Clean pocket completion percentage. He's 4th overall. So when there's a clean pocket, he's amazing. But he's not going to get that this game. So the air yards are going to drop. The completion percentage is going to drop. Smith has been a popular streaming option throughout the season and generally played well on the year, even ranking as the overall quarterback 12 for fantasy at the moment. However, no quarterback has thrown more interceptions while under pressure this season than Smith. 10. Fuck. He has also taken a high number of sacks when under pressure, recording the third most in the league in those situations, 37. Smith is also unlikely to scramble in those situations and add value with his legs, as his 8 total scrambles rank 20th among 25 quarterbacks with at least 100 pressured dropbacks this season. On a week where there are 32 quarterbacks to choose from, because there's no fucking buys this week, thank God, Smith does not stand out as a strong option as a Seahawks matchup against the Jets, ranked 31st for quarterbacks according to PFF's strength of schedule tool. So here's the thing, the Jets secondary have actually been giving up a lot of points to wide receivers as late, but that's when the quarterbacks have time to throw. This is telling us here, PFF is telling us here, that he's not going to have time to throw. Defenders are going to be in his face. He's not going to have time to throw a downfield to a Tyler Lockett or DK Metcalf if he plays. And his rushing, we're like, oh, well, maybe he rushes. He rushes less than 4 times a game, and his total yards on the season, 224 rushing yards per game. He averages 20 rushing yards a game. I mean, that's 2 additional points. You're going to be hoping that he gets more than 20 rushing yards in this game. But according to PFF, defenders are going to be constantly in his face. He's not going to be accurate when thrown. He's going to throw interceptions. He's going to get sacked. He's not going to scramble a lot. This is the week that you want to leave him on your waiver wire and not in your lineup. Ice him out. Next up, next offensive line we want to avoid is the Cincinnati Bengals versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. I am very intrigued with this one. The Bengals offensive line has allowed a 30.2% pressure rate, the 7th worst mark on the season, while its 63.3 pass blocking grade ranks just 23rd. The Steelers defensive line owns the league's highest pass rush grade at 90.2, creating the biggest disadvantage in the trenches according to PFF in the offensive line, defensive line matchup tool. And I believe ever since Joe Burrow started his career in Cincinnati, this has always been the problem. The offensive line for the Bengals have always been an issue every year. Joe Burrow's either getting sacked or getting hurt, but this is not the player that we're going to try to ice out. No, you're not icing out Joe Burrow. He's playing unbelievable right now. The player that you want to ice out is T. Higgins. Now, I like this one. I like PFF is going after T. Higgins on this. T. Higgins hasn't had the best year, but the one thing that he's getting, he has the 6th highest target share for wide receivers. I mean, that's great. So he's getting the volume, but everything else here is pretty much crap. Like his yards after catch, he's 50th. Receiving yards, he's 44th. Yards per route run, he's 23rd. I mean, he's top 24, but, 23rd overall. Total touchdowns, 4. So the guy's going to get receptions, but the receptions don't really turn into anything. Higgins came back from an injury in week 12 and delivered a very strong fantasy performance, finishing as PPR wide receiver 2. However, the disadvantage in the trenches for the Bengals this week, especially if the Steelers get Alex Highsmith back, may create issues for Higgins specifically. On pressure dropbacks, Higgins owns just a 9.5% target rate, which ranks fourth among 5 qualifying Bengals wide receivers and tight ends, and 113th among 168 qualifiers under those circumstances. As a result, Higgins has generated just a 0.09 fantasy point per route run, which ranks 136 among those same 168 qualifiers and last on the Bengals. It's possible that the Bengals passing offense isn't able to thrive like they have in recent weeks, given the matchup, which could leave Higgins as the odd man out this week for fantasy football. So what this is telling me here, because of the matchup, because of the trenches, because of the pressure rate, Higgins is not going to really see much of anything in this game. He may get some, but on pressure dropbacks from Joe Burrow, Higgins is only targeted 9.5% of the time. So I don't like those odds. Plus, this is already a division rival. We've seen what the Steelers have done to the Ravens and to the Browns in recent weeks. This sounds like a very good opportunity. If you have someone better that you would rather put in than T. Higgins, I would do it. It sounds like that we need to try to ice out T. Higgins out of your lineup. And the third and final offensive line that we're going to try to avoid is the Cleveland Browns. Surprisingly, if this was the last 5 years, the Cleveland Browns would have been an offensive line they're trying to target, but not anymore. Not this year. So we're avoiding the Browns versus the Denver Broncos. The Browns offensive line has generated just a 1.1 rushing yards before contact per attempt, which ranks 21st. While they own just a 53.8 run blocking grade, that's 29th overall. The Broncos own a top 10 run defense grade, that's 71.9, while allowing the second fewest rushing yards before contact per attempt at 0.8 this season. So we already know the person that this is going to impact the most, the person we're going to try to ice out, is Nick Chubb. The guy with the $5 million leg finally had a good game this year where he had 20 rushes for 59 yards and 2 touchdowns that equal out to 18 points. So if you were thinking like now it's time to ride the Nick Chubb train, this is saying otherwise. Now, I'm not going to bust out a bunch of crazy stats on Nick Chubb. I mean, his leg looked like the letter Z last year after week 2. We're just thankful that he's back and playing, and he hasn't been playing great. He's been playing kind of mediocre. I mean, but he's coming back from that crazy injury, and you got him in the late rounds. But he did have a good game, and PFF is saying Chubb is coming off his best game of the season thanks to finding the end zone twice in a snowy Thursday night football game. Chubb ran the ball 20 times in that game, which had a lot to do with the weather, as the Browns came into last week's game with the lowest run rate in the league at 30%. But in week 12, that number rose to 47.3%. That was the 6th highest for the week. Much of the Browns' offensive development changed in that game, as it went from a pass-heavy, 11 personnel-heavy offense to focusing on the ground game and switching to a 12 personnel for 44% of its offensive snaps. That's the second highest rate in week 12. This was, in large part, due to the snow last week, but the weather should be clear on Monday in Denver, which is likely to get the Browns back to the usual offensive game plan. The Broncos are currently 5.5-point home favorites, which could also force the Browns into some more passing situations this week. Cleveland's running back matchup ranks 23rd according to PFF's strength of schedule. Yeah, they're going against the Broncos. It's already hard to run against the Broncos, and this is basically saying the reason why they used Chubb a lot last week is just because, I don't know if you saw the game, but it was like a blizzard. It was very difficult to throw in it. So they ran the ball a lot, and he was able to get 2 touchdowns in the goal line. But this week should be different. The guy, Jameis Winston, he likes to huck him, chuck him, sock him football. He likes to just throw it out there all the time. He's always throwing it deep. So if you're thinking about starting this guy because what happened last week, PFF is saying to ice this guy out of your lineup. All right, now I want to do my quick hits. I want to talk about some games that you want to be a part of or stay away from. And the first game that I want to talk about is the Los Angeles Rams against the New Orleans Saints. So the Rams are only giving up 23% pressure rate, which is converted into a sack 17% of the time. That's a little bit higher than average on the sacks, but the pressure rate is definitely lower than most. And the Saints, they're not getting to the quarterback. They're not even 30% of the time, so that's pretty low. And their sacks are even lower at 50% of the rate. So Matthew Stafford should stay upright in this game. PFF is giving them an advantage in the passing game of 25%. And when we go to the wide receivers here, of course, Puka Nacua, you're starting. Cooper Kupp, you're starting. DeMarcus Robinson, the guys, if he's not in jail, I guess he'll play. And their matchups on the other side with the Saints, look, it's 0.27, 0.35, that's pretty good, 0.25, but either way, you're starting Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp either way, because they're elite wide receivers. So it looks like in this matchup, Matthew Stafford's going to stay upright. He's going to be able to have time to throw to a Puka Nacua, to a Cooper Kupp. So this game, he should probably smash in, actually. And the other game I want to talk about, I'm going to talk about the running game. I'm going to go after the Carolina Panthers offense against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense. Right now, PFF is giving the Carolina's offense a 31% advantage in the run game. I mean, it's not great. They're earning a 1.16 yards before contact. But look at this. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they are allowing almost 1.5 yards before contact on a rush. That sucks. That's one of the worst in the league. And then they give up 20 runs inside the 5, and it's been converted into touchdowns 40% of the time. That's where they kind of take their stand, but I mean, that's still a lot of opportunities inside the 5-yard line. And the Carolina Panthers, they've run inside the 5 15 times, and that's converted into touchdowns 40% of the time. So that the goal line is not good, but the good thing with Chubb Hubbard, like, he's a goal line back, but he can also score from like 10, 15 yards out. So this looks like a game for Chubb Hubbard to get a lot of rushing yards and a lot of opportunities to score fantasy points in this one. All right, and a couple games that we want to stay away from, and one of the games I'm looking at here is the Jacksonville Jaguars offensive line against the Houston Texans defensive line. So when it comes to the passing game, PFF is giving the Jaguars a disadvantage of 23% in the passing game. While they don't give up a lot of pressure, which is amazing, they've only given up 23% of pressure. That's been converted into sacks 90% of the time. That's a high number. That's a number you don't want to see if you're a Jacksonville fan. And the Houston Texans, wow, they put pressure on the quarterback 37% of the time, and that's converted into 21 or into a sack 21% of the time. Those are both. That's an elite number right there. They're going to be bullying the Jaguars offensive line. So if you can, I would try to stay away from that game, the Jacksonville Jaguars game. I can't remember, but I think Trevor Lawrence is set to play. Now, the wide receiver matchup in that same game, the Houston Texans here, their cornerbacks, 0.23, 0.20. Stingley's going to be shadowing Brian Thomas, their best option. Houston's safety, or their slot cornerback. He actually gives up a lot. 0.53. So who's Parker Washington? So if there's anybody that you want to play from this game when it comes to the passing, I would try Parker Washington, who's taken over the Christian Kirk role. And then the last game I want to talk about, the game that we want to try to avoid with the running attack, it's going to be the Arizona Cardinals offensive line against the Minnesota's defensive line. So the Arizona Cardinals, they earn a 1.27 yards before contact. You know, that's pretty average for the league. Not bad. They've run the ball inside the 5 11 times, and it's been converted into a touchdown 64% of the time. But damn, they are going against the Minnesota Vikings. Yards before contact earned or allowed 1.04. They're a fucking brick wall, dude. They just sit there and just flex, dude. You're bouncing off of them. You're not going through them. They've only allowed 7 runs inside the 5-yard line, and it's been converted into a touchdown 29% of the time. This is a bad matchup for James Conner and the running game for the Arizona Cardinals. PFF has given them a disadvantage of 6% in the run game. So if you have James Conner, I would try to look somewhere else and find another running back to play for Week 13. And that's a wrap for the offensive line report for Week 13. Now you know which players to target, which players to avoid. Plus, you have more information about additional games that you want to be a part of or you want to stay away from. Every Friday night, Tyler and I do a live Rick show and answer questions from the chat. If you want to know where your players landed in the ranks for Week 13, if they were high, if they were low, check this video out right here. I'll talk to you in that video. Deuces.